Good afternoon, everyone, or good evening, good morning, depending where you're located. This is Chris Torrence coming to you with another episode of the semi-related podcast on behalf of Optum. Got a cool guest today, a guy I've kind of gotten to know better over the last couple of years. And just, yeah, we've always hit it off, man. Always having really cool, casual conversations that seem to be organic. And usually, I think an event was our last opportunity to do that. But yeah, Brian Thompson with SMC3, man. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, I'm good. Thanks for having me, Chris. It's always a pleasure. I'm a big fan, so I'm honored to be a guest.
Yes, glad to have you, man. And as I told Brian off camera and Jacob and the marketing team, I am at an airport. So for the audience, if you happen to hear any kind of, I'm missing my flight or something, it's worth it. I will miss that flight to talk to Brian today. So apologies for any background, but yeah, we should be good to go. But well, Brian, like I said, I think for those that may not know you, man, and I'm going to get a little deeper. I'm not going to get you give the typical surface answer, but like I know I assume you're in Peachtree City, ATL today at home,
Correct.
right?
Yes, suburb of Atlanta.
Okay.
Yes,
that's right. Been to the office, by the way. So not gorgeous facility, by the way. I think I was down there last year, and gotta say that's one of the more impressive offices I've been in a while. So for those that may be in that general vicinity, I don't know if there's an open invite, but it is worth checking out. I mean, super cool. Just for the record.
Yeah, we built that during COVID, and so we our crystal ball didn't tell us that the pandemic was coming, but
it's a gorgeous piece of real estate. Yeah, it's great.
Yes. It's a lot of fun. It's a great building. We feel very fortunate to be here. Ironically, we made the decision to build the building because we were outgrowing the old space. We definitely ran out of parking spaces. And now we live in a world of hybrid work and virtual work, and parking really isn't usually an issue anymore. But
right.
We're still very, very fortunate to have the building. So.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. Highly recommend people, if you're in that general vicinity, you can't really miss it. It's just, again, it's very eye catching. And the inside, that atrium and the waterfall. I mean, for those that don't know, I actually got a really nice tour, I think sometime last year with Brian and his executive team, and man, it was just like one of those that just very impressive. But Brian, like I said, man, let's go back a little bit. I know what you do now, and I think a lot of folks know your name from, throughout the industry for many, many years. Did a little school down in the Missouri area before you probably got back. And, I noticed that your first, what was been published is, you had your first role, I guess, at a school was analytical chemist. Did I get that right? Which is obviously what everyone in logistics and supply chain is thinking about is, chemistry, of course.
Absolutely. So. I mean, why not? Everyone makes their decision when they're 18 to go into chemistry so they can get into logistics. And
was it the periodic table that did it for you? Is that still like a banner in the house somewhere today and just kind of keeping it real still, or yeah?
Yeah, I really like archaic symbols, terminology, acronyms, and so I thought, why not LTL?
Right.
Chemistry was too basic and easy, too straightforward. So I thought I needed a challenge. So I eventually worked my way into LTL. Yeah. So, I mean, it's kind of interesting, right? So, yeah. I mean, like other 18-year-olds, I didn't know what I really wanted to do, but I knew that had an affinity for math and science, and just basic problem solving really attracted me. So I went the chemistry route. Originally, my plan, though, was, I just want to make a lot of money. I know no 18-year-old feels that way, right? But they're like, I want a career. When I get out of here, it might be 30 years old, but I'm going to be a doctor, right? I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to figure that out. So obviously, I made a decision along the way that I want a different decision. And I was glad I went chemistry, because then I was like, okay, well, I can get a job. So it was a good job, and it was analytical in nature. So so coming out of school, I lived in central Missouri, married my wife, and started my career as an analytical chemist for a manufacturing company. Did a lot of failure analysis, quality assurance, and quality control. And
I'm seeing parallels already. I mean, really, to what you do today. So.
Yeah. Well, and right. So that's how I started. I was really attracted to that problem solving. And then, but I was like, but I really wasn't in love with all the dishes I had to wash in the evening. So if you're familiar with analytical chemistry, you cannot have any contamination. So, while there are powerful machines that can take care of some of the dishes, there's always that chunk you've got to do by hand. And my wife would tell you that I was a very bad chemist. I wasn't a bad chemist. I was just maybe a little careless, and I'd come home with acid burns on my shirts and yellow stains on my hands from nitric acid, and
Eee.
she was always worried about my safety. So
Make you wear a chem suit, like biohazard sign chem suit around the house in those days, I don't know. I think my wife wants me to wear one of those for different reasons, but hey, that's a different story. But yeah.
Right.
Well, cool.
Right,
Well, you
right.
but you end up moving into like then the LTL bug, or is that haphazard, or how does that YRC yellow? And that was a big chapter, right? That was a pretty substantial chapter.
Yes, yeah. So I went from being an analytical chemist after about 2 years of doing dishes and a little chemistry on the side. I decided to go back and get a business degree, which I'd had no business classes in my undergraduate program. They were all focused on science, and I mean, it was I had some fine arts classes in English, of course, all that, but no business classes. And I'm like, but I had an interest in it. Again, I already said I had an interest in making money, so why not get educated in that? So I took a class in the MBA program at Mizzou in Columbia, Missouri, and I was doing that part-time while I was working, and I was like, this is terrific. So I actually really, really enjoyed it. So I decided to go there full time, right? So the company I was working for, they were getting bought out, and they wanted me to move to Pennsylvania. And I said, Pennsylvania's lovely, but I'm going to turn my career to finishing my MBA. And so I got my MBA with an emphasis in finance and marketing. Great combination. I love both. I just couldn't decide which way to go. And finance and marketing, though, it turns out is a great combination to have if you're interested in pricing. And so that's how that happened. So Yellow Transportation out of Kansas City, Overland Park, Kansas, was interviewing for MBA grads, setting up a new strategic analysis team to help develop new pricing tools, pricing processes, bid techniques, that kind of thing. And I said, okay, so that sounds like right up my alley. So I did some interviews and ended up getting that job and started at Yellow as a pricing analyst in 2000.
Awesome, man. And then again, you were there for what, just shy of a couple decades? I mean,
I was there for 17 years.
17 years.
17 years.
That's a good run.
Yeah. So, and it was good, right? It was a great run, a great learning experience. I really enjoyed my time there. Obviously we had some interesting times there. Yeah. We got through the 2008, 2009, 2010 time. Got to see though the growth when we purchased Roadway, and then had to assimilate them and kind of come together as a team and form one network, form one pricing team. U.S. Freightways, and brought Holland and Redaway and New Penn into the family. And New Penn was part of the Roadway purchase, but
we're going to date ourselves with all the M&A and just the nature of how businesses roll. If you've been in the game for multiple decades, I get it.
That's right. So we had our ups and downs, but it was a great learning experience. Really enjoyed my time there. Had great team, great people. So the last 6 years I was there, I was the vice president of pricing yield management, and got to work really closely with the leadership there and the sales leadership in particular. We had a lot of good stuff going. But I made the hard decision in 2017 to make a switch had this opportunity at SMC3 to be chief commercial officer. And once again, you could tell, I'd never had any experience in like a sales and marketing role. If anything, right, I was the pricing guy, and traditionally there's a little tension between pricing and sales. So, people may think that I felt like I knew better. I didn't. I mean, so anyway, but I had a lot of fun. I was a customer of SMC3's while I was at Yellow.
I was going to ask you how that all kind of came about. Yeah.
Yeah. So SMC3, who I'm with now, for those of you that don't know who SMC3 is, we focus, we're a trade association housed in Atlanta, Georgia, that we offer data, technology, and education solutions primarily to the LTL industry, but I'm to the freight industry in general with a specific focus on LTL. That's, by the way, with the 3 in SMC3 stands for data, technology, and education. So
I learned that when I was visiting the office. I mean, it must be part of the tour spiel, right? Like, you've got to define that right at the gate. Yeah.
That's part of the 15-second elevator speech. What does 3 in SMC3 stand for?
It's a logical
question. What is the 3 in SMC3? SMC cubed, right? So those math majors My wife is a math teacher, and she's like, "Why is it SMC³?" Right? So
Right.
anyway.
Well, look, man, you got it. I feel like you're a bit of a renaissance man. We got some chemistry going. We got the business and finance background, culinary arts. We kind of haphazardly in the kitchen at some point, and then that translates into you get this
Lots
sales
of
marketing.
dishes everywhere.
Yeah. So that it kind of it culminates into this commercial hat that you wear today at SMC3.
Mhm.
So that's pretty impressive. I think a lot of folks in this industry, Brian, I'm kind of one of them. I don't know that I had my path carved out like at 18 years old, and it's just kind of but we are where we are, man. And I think it's all worked out. And I have no regrets, despite taking the road less traveled, I guess, as some would say. But, well,
I
Brian,
think that's the
yeah,
lesson, right? Is don't try to predict. Don't when you're 18 and or 22, graduating from college, you want to have it all figured out and have it all planned out. Got to be open to opportunities, forks in the road.
right.
Just sometimes you have to take a chance here and there. You may not feel like you have a lot of experience in there, but you got to trust your experience, your education, the people around you, and be willing to learn. I think as long as you always have that growth mindset, you can make anything work. And so I'm in a great spot here. SMC3 has got a lot of great things going on. LTL industry in general has a lot of great and very interesting things going on. It is never boring. So, it's a lot of fun, and I look forward to the future, really.
Yeah, speaking of, I know I want to kind of turn this in because we know you're coming off of the annual Jumpstart event, which I heard great things about. I think there's probably some themes and just topics in general, as every conference, right? In any given year, based on a lot of variables, market, et cetera. But when you think about like, I kind of want to step back. So when you look at that nearly 20 years at Yellow, and all the morphs that kind of happened throughout your tenure there, when you think about what you're doing at SMC3 now, what lessons did you think what did you bring with you? I know you had that operational, analytical, pricing experience in the front lines operationally, and now you're kind of in a slightly different role. But what did you take with you from that prior history of nearly 20 years at Yellow that kind of have obviously again played a part in where you are today?
Yeah, I mean, probably the biggest thing is just the experience of having lived it and
Yeah,
knowing it's hard to that's the hardest thing for new hires that we make, here at SMC3 is in order to be we're a consultative organization as much as a solutions provider. And in order to really, you have to understand what the person who you're talking to, what they're going through, what their challenges are. They may or may not be able to, communicate that in perfect detail exactly. But if you've lived it and you've seen enough, kind of having that perspective to help them make the connection between, how the solutions that are available in the industry, whether they're SMC3s or another
sure,
provider solutions, help them, do better business, be more
right.
optimized, make better business decisions, be more profitable if that's their goal, improve service, whatever it might be. So I really enjoyed when I was at Yellow, creating doing more with less, right? And
Yeah,
so and technology was the answer there. How can I create solutions to help us process bids smoother, make better bid decisions, take into account the operational needs of the organization, and even above and beyond just the dollars and cents of it, right? How can we work with customers that are profit challenged to make them profitable and make it a win-win,
hmm,
cut them off, find ways to improve, the service we're providing them, as well as the financial return for us. So those kind of things and those discussions with those customers, with those shippers and logistics companies, I mean, that I brought that with me to SMC3, and now that was one of the big draws, was now I can provide solutions to the whole industry, whether it be a
yeah,
shipper, another technology provider, a a carrier, of
mhm.
course, and help them, solve their business problems. So, that's probably the biggest thing I brought with me.
Yeah, no, I would concur with that. I mean, my whole background is I was a practitioner, right, in the operational front lines world, just like you were. And I think, when you see the more junior folks, and I always tell people back in our day, at least mine, I don't think we even had majors in supply chain or logistics. You may had like a little flavor if you're in there on some business class, but never a focus that we see today. And so what's interesting though, Brian, is right, we have these tier one schools now teaching supply chain management, et cetera, which I applaud. Didn't have that
Yep.
luxury. I don't think you did either. But there's a fundamental difference. And I always tell, I'm working with the more of the academic community in the last few years and professors, et cetera. And it's interesting how, even my own boss now, a former professor at well-known schools would often, I think the big reason he leaped from the classroom environment to creating a business was, he felt there was always a little bit of a disconnect on what's being taught in the classroom versus what the reality is on the ground. So I think for me, it's like, hey, I hear these theoretical ideas, which I believe in theory are amazing. And I think there's this fundamental fallacy, though, from some of that, like the classroom, right? Of, this is how things should work. And it's not that you're not wrong. It should do that, but only until you get in this game do you understand how you have to be able to juggle that, what's theoretically possible with what is pragmatic and practical based on a lot of things, right? And I don't know that you can, as you're talking to those junior people coming up through SMC3 now, it's really hard to like articulate 20, 30 years of experience because they'll question things probably coming out of a classroom that they learned in a book. And you're trying to like validate that education was worthwhile, but it's like, let's just kind of take this off the, from the classroom back into the real world. And I think that's just invaluable. And so when I give, anybody asks me for feedback or college grads, right? I'm sure you got kids, what all these conversations are happening. It's kind of that, again, that the art and the science of what we do of, that harmonization of things, right? And I think I don't know that you could get that without having been through that gauntlet that you and I have been through for many years. So I commend you for that. And I always think street cred is instantly earned by people that you go on their resume and say, oh, this is somebody that's lived and breathed this for so long.
Right. And, there's no transportation logistics. Number one, I've learned it is the cool industry to be in nowadays. Like you said, there wasn't even an industry really seemingly when we were right. When I first got my job with Yellow, whenever I told somebody I was working for Yellow, they're like, oh, are you driving a truck? And I'm like, no, but I'm like, but you're working for a trucking company. I said, yes, but there's so much more. At that time, they were moving 1 million shipments a month. Do you know how much data that is and how much optimization? Network optimization and small changes mean big dollars. I know you at Optum know that as well as anybody. Mm-hmm. And so I was surprised. So, one of my kids, she's an industrial engineer here at studying industrial engineering at Georgia Tech. And she's like, I think I want to go into logistics. And I was floored, right? My daughter wants to go into logistics. I was like, did I brainwash you somewhere along the way? But no, she got it because they don't really care what their parents say, right? We all know this. It's what their friends are saying and they're hearing around campus. In a world where technology changes so fast and it needs the data in order to really to create those algorithms and solve those problems, the biggest challenges and problems in the world, but they're tangible. And so that's what's exciting is they can, you can see a problem, see where you are, step 1, go through step 200 of a good, algorithm and see a tangible solution and result and feel proud of that. And I think that's some of what excites the younger generation to get interested in that. And then I would also say that, that's a gap that we saw at SMC3 was education as well.
Yeah, I was going to get into that too. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that. I don't know if that's part of our plan here, but just, it's tough. Like I said, logistics and transportation, it's such a broad field, and every mode has their own individual nuances and terminology and considerations, factors you have to look at, right? And so it's like, how do you cover that in one class? Even a 4-year program, it's very difficult to cover that in depth at any one. And so they teach them some of the basics and give them some tools, right? I do think that some of these mathematical models and optimization tools are very helpful no matter what industry you're in. But there is still this gap for LTL. And so at SMC3, as I said, one of the 3 things that pillars we stand for is education. And so we developed an online educational program to help try to fill that gap and help educate. We have hundreds of students that take it and implement their supply chain educations with that program. And then we also offer it though for, whether shippers or logistics companies, carriers. We have companies that license it at an enterprise level so they can offer it to all their new employees because, I mean, yes, you may be a transportation manager that manages both LTL, truckload, anything on the dock, right? But, or you could even be a new third-party logistics company that's bringing in fresh young kids to work a call center or do inside sales or what have you. It's like, how do you get them the education? And so we try to, we just help them. We teach them the basics of LTL with the online program, and then let them focus their educational energy and resources on their culture, on their company-specific processes, procedures, but don't waste their time on the basics that they need to know. Come to a trusted source, and and then they can cover the rest.
Yeah, no, well said, and congrats with the an industrial engineer grad at Georgia Tech. I mean, again, that's I'm nowhere near that level of caliber at that age, right? I just feel like I was still just trying to figure out like anything and everything, and that's already off to a great start. So kudos to you and your daughter for that. Brian, let's going back to kind of like again, it's fresh, right? Jumpstart, and I know Connections and Jumpstart, two premier events that you guys host every year, I believe. Coming out of Jumpstart, which was just a week or two ago. I get conference season; it starts to blend in my head, but I think it was relatively recent. But I want to.
It was last week. Yes.
Last week, okay. And I know we had some folks on our team attend. Again, very positive feedback. What were some of the trends and the topics? And I know it's real. You had a wide ecosystem of various players, partners within the LTL ecosystem. Again, what were some of the key takeaways that you would, for folks that couldn't make it, that you can kind of be the voice now in this medium to kind of give them an idea of what is the industry? What is the LTL industry really? What are they worried about? What are they excited about? Gosh, this is a full gamut. We could probably take another hour just on this topic, but just from a more higher level, what were you hearing, Brian?
Yeah, no, great. So we had a terrific event. We had over 700 people here. It was an all-time record for us, and I do think that that it's a sign of how interested people are in the challenges they're wrestling with in their day-to-day jobs. And we're conveniently timed to be right at the beginning of the year, which is why it's called Jumpstart, but people just got off of vacation. They're getting back into the heart of the business, and they're trying to plan, how am I going to be successful this year? And so we try to lay out content speakers that will help give them that foundational piece, talk to their peers about some of the challenges they're encountering and possible solutions for solving that. But I mean, I feel like, so there were a couple of topics that definitely resonated at this conference in general. We always cover the economic outlook. That was definitely a hot topic. Everyone's waiting for, when is the freight recession going to end? And even if you ask me, Chris, I won't answer. I don't know.
I get that question all the time, by the way, and I don't have the crystal ball. I don't think I ever will. So I'm not a pundit in that regard. So let others speak and take the glory or the fault, depending on if they're right or wrong. But I'm with you, man. I'm with you.
Well, if you keep saying the recovery's coming, you'll eventually be right, because every broken clock is running twice a day,
That's
right?
Right. So, well said. Well said.
Anyway, so we keep hearing second half, and everybody, every year we say second half, but it does. Signs are pointing up. I'll give the punchline on that one. Signs are pointing up. There are obviously some factors that could sway things. Are they going to be up a lot, or are they going to be up just a little, or flat? We've been kind of stuck in neutral for a while now, and so we'll see how things play out. There's a lot in the mix, and so that was the other hot topic, is of course a new administration's in office, and what's going to happen there. And I think we're all trying to still trying to figure that out. It's only 2 weeks in, I think, on that. So so that's one factor that's going to drive the industry and drive people's decisions, whether it be how does the policy shape up. And so people wanted to listen to some of that. There's a couple of industry specific topic that came up a lot was the changes to the National Motor Freight Classification System. The proposed changes, I should say. Although the docket is out there, right? The docket's out there. Folks can weigh in now. Go to the NMFTA.org website, and they'll tell you a lot more about it than I can cover here on this podcast. But that was definitely a topic of conversation. We had quite a few shippers there, that both on stage as well as kind of throughout the conference. trying to get their heads around what does this mean for them, for their organization. So just so that in case anybody doesn't know.
Yeah, I was going to say elaborate, because I just joined a session yesterday that had kind of ties into this. Very informative. I hope the recording goes out. But Brian, yeah, educate some folks that may just, we speak in acronyms. So for those that may not know, because it's very, it's relevant to, they may not know it's actually very relevant to them. So can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure, yeah. So I think anyone that ships LTL knows what the classification is, but basically every commodity that's ever shipped across North America is assigned, an NMFC item number, and that's how that class is how you determine what your rate is going to be. It's a general. There are 4 factors in any price. There's where is it coming from, where is it going to, and then how much does it weigh, and what's the class. And the class is an approximation for volume, but it also takes into account handling stowability characteristics, liability associated with that freight. If it breaks, how much risk is there to the carrier, and having to recoup on a claim and all of that. So, but for those items, those commodities that are really solely only determined a class based on density, they're changing from from a single number, if it's a single commodity item, or it could be a range of items, and then you have to know a lot more about the shipment. They're just simplifying that process. I'll give you an example. So metal alloys. If you look at metal alloys, there are like 18 or 19 individual listed based on the description of the alloy. It's a bicarbonate, aluminate, blah, blah.
Bring that chemistry background back into this. Come on.
It's the chemistry background. I had some flashbacks reading that example. Yeah. And so there are maybe 18 or 19 of these individual, very specific, to determine your class, you have to know what the alloy exactly is. Well, I mean, the idea that the classification can keep up with all alloys, that may come into being, or, it's not likely. And it's a lot simpler for everybody if, those 18 or 19 alloys are identified a class based solely on density. Just let it all go by density. So, so that simplification of the classification is what's proposed. It should affect about 30% of the commodities, but those 30% of the commodities I've heard represent about 60 to 70% of the freight that moves in the industry. So there is definitely going to be an impact there. Now, the impact to shippers could be up, could be down. I mean, it really, the lesson of the day was those shippers that are the most efficient, are more likely to see savings, right? So, but if you ship everything on a 4x4 pallet, but all you're doing is strapping a compressor to it, you're going to pay going forward. You're going to pay for the space of the 4x4 pallet instead of the density of just the compressor. So maybe have a smaller pallet size for that compressor, so they can still easily move it, and but still leave space on the truck for other freight.
Right.
The carrier benefits, and then the shipper should hopefully benefit with a lower rate. And those that do the opposite and have overhang, or are packed very inefficiently, well, they're going to pay more. So, that was the topic of discussion, because everyone's trying to figure out, well, so I've got 10,000 SKUs. How do I figure out what the price impact is to me? And, we do have some material out there. I put a blog out there last week, and we've got another white paper coming out here in another week or two that goes into a little bit of detail about, we're going to let the NMFTA, they've done a great job communicating what the changes are. And these changes, by the way, would take effect on July 19th of 2025. So that's why people are trying to figure it out now. But there's the understanding the changes, but then they have to understand their freight mix to understand the impact of them. My class was A, and now my class going forward will be B. Right. And then now I have to calculate the impact to my transportation spend. So they're just trying to figure all of that out. And so that was a hot topic of discussion. The NMFTA was there with the table answering questions. Well, And we had some shippers on stage, like I said, kind of talking about
Right.
their experiences, what their process is to try to figure it out. So yeah, some really good stuff came out of that. A lot of discussion there.
And the docket you said is out. So do you have any idea, Brian? I know, again, no future predictions, but sound like things are kind of leaning that direction. I mean, if a docket's out, I guess that's a signal in its own right. Yeah.
Yes, I don't work at the NMFTA, but I mean, from everybody I talked to, I would plan. I think the safest bet is to plan on it going forward and being implemented. If there are changes to it, and there have been changes to this point before the docket was released, but
Right.
I think that right now is the time period for folks to weigh in and give their thoughts to the NMFTA, and then it'll be voted on, I believe, in March, or
Okay.
yeah, I believe in March, and then then effective on the 19th of July. So I would count on it going into place, and that's the safest bet.
Got it. Brian, we kind of shift gears. I know this was surely a topic, as at every conference, is, with the tech side, right? We got I think I joined a session yesterday on another initiative, somewhat related, right, to NMFTA, got to get the acronym right, about kind of some standardization around APIs. And again, that kind of leads us into the tech. We can go down that path, right? I'm very pro one day APIs, right? API calls will take over. May not be indicative of reality right now, but it's certainly, I'm glad the discussion continues to evolve in that direction. But and just generally speaking, Brian, what any other technologies? I mean, again, we kind of know them, I think, but beyond the headlines, right? Any other takeaways from Jumpstart relative to a tech track? Anything that just kind of stuck out?
Yes. I think everyone knows that the next hot tech topic is AI. So we had a keynote speaker, Zach Cass, talked. He opened up the conference on Monday morning. I did catch that one, so I was very fortunate. I wanted to catch that one for sure, and I had a chance to meet with him beforehand as well. Very interesting guy. He's one of the original 3 founders of OpenAI, so he was on the ground there, and now he's doing a lot of consulting, a lot of advising, and very vocal across the industry. He was a great speaker. He's got it was interesting timing, because the same morning that he spoke on stage was the same morning that the big news announcement about DeepSeek. The Chinese originated low-cost model was news broke on that same morning. And he was like, he's a believer. He believes, he's like, it's real. He said, it's basically got, originally everybody has this assumption that you need these tremendously expensive, high-powered chips in order to, and huge data centers in order to do all this AI, build these AI models and build the next greatest and really take them to the next level. And DeepSeek showed that, on your laptop computer with some innovative training techniques, you can actually do a lot. In fact, on their laptop, they matched what Chat GPT-4.
Yeah, I saw the A/B comparison.
I don't know if they're completely identical. That's not exactly my area of specialty, but it sounded very, very promising that for that,
for what, $6 million bucks, I think it was like,
wide availability. I mean, I think that's
open source,
low cost and wide availability to so many different people, so many different applications. It really opens the door to that. And so there was quite a bit of talk from Zach, as well as others on stage about the same thing. And of course, people are worried about, oh, well, is it going to replace me and my job? And it's like, I mean, I still think AI is almost intelligence instead of artificial intelligence. It's amazing how fast it's coming and it's getting there. But it still needs, instead of maybe being the one, like take a LTL, for example. I think someday, we'll rely on AI, and that'll fill some of the void of this, getting up this learning curve education-wise, right? Yeah. So today, we started talking about how, I had over 20 years of experience in the industry, and what does that bring, to my job? And it's like, that's great, but man, imagine if somebody coming in can speak plain English to an expert on the screen and get 40, 60, 80% of the way to a solution. I mean, just the amount of acceleration you get on developing new innovations, new solving problems. And really, because it's like, I don't have to learn how to code in Java. But if I can tell an AI bot in plain English what I want a program to do,
Right.
and you can write it in Java. Or if I say, hey, I've got a Java program, I want you to modernize this in whatever language, right? And it can just translate from one to the other. And you still have to be smart enough, and you still have to have the experts to be able to, I tell my kids, right, if you're ever filling out an application or doing an essay problem, with AI, like be sure you read it and it's your words and it's your thoughts, because it's still imperfect, very much
Right.
imperfect.
These hallucinations are real. We've seen them. So yeah, that's a good word of caution. Yeah.
Right. Don't totally take your hands off the wheel.
Right.
Edit it. It's trust it only to a point, and so but it's the acceleration and it's the speed with which things are delivered to market that is going to be changing the most. And so that's what's exciting. I do expect it'll impact LTL. It'll impact every industry, every mode, to varying degrees. But like I said, I can't build an optimization model off the top of my head, or if I did,
Me neither.
right, it would take me 5 years to get to the point, get my knowledge up there, do trial and error, and get it there. When I can tell Chat GPT 13, down the road here, hey, I want you to hear my nodes. Here's the business. Find me the best way to dispatch my drivers. Find the best way for me to, and here, and I want you to optimize it for miles, or I want you to optimize it for low cost. I want you to optimize it for service, whatever that, those factors are. And it can run hundreds, thousands of iterations in minutes instead of 5 years of my trial and error. It frees me up to do, I don't know, is there higher learning than that? Higher activities? Maybe not.
This is it.
This is it. It gets me, I can talk about what my specialist thought can do, So, but it's good. It's very exciting. It's very exciting. And I know we're messing with it here at SMC3, trying to learn how it can help us, help others, and take the industry to the next level. And some of the areas where, obviously, the first place is you look internally and say, what are some of the repetitive activities that we're doing that we can, if I'm reviewing documents, I want to know, hey, these carriers changed their accessorial charges. Let me know where they changed them and what they were and what they are now, so I can have the systems update quickly, right? So that versus somebody reading a document, that's just simple, plain good sense. That's the first place you see it. And then it's like, oh, hey, now externally, okay, so my bid application, bid analytics, instead of one person sitting here clicking and dragging in a bid analytics application to try to build individual scenarios, like, hey, so Mr. Robot, I want to, here are my constraints, here are my rules, here are the guidelines, here's what I'm optimizing for. Give me the best answer. And it can do it in seconds or minutes instead of taking forever. Dynamic pricing. I'm a carrier and I want to set my rates. I want to make sure that I'm filling my backhaul lanes. I want to make sure if I'm already doing business with a shipper and they quote me 100 times and they ship with me 100 times, they like something about me, and I'm really offering them something that nobody else is. Maybe I can command a higher price for my service and invest that money and continue to build out additional offerings and more value, right? Or, hey, this customer is very, very price sensitive, right? Instead of having a team of 100 pricing analysts analyzing individual account activity, I can have, one algorithm built by an AI system figure that out on the fly. And, oh, hey, my AI just realized that the decision maker at this customer's location changed. I'm talking futuristic here, right?
Yeah.
They're monitoring LinkedIn and they recognize that now there's a new decision maker. And so now, oh, hey, this guy was price sensitive and now he's not. Now he really favors me. I've got a great relationship with this guy from his previous place of work. Let me, maybe I can adjust my price based on that. So that the world is just kind of, I mean, the only limit is our own vision and imagination, which is the most exciting thing. Before, the limit was, yes, it's our imagination, but it's also the resources. Can we
Right.
hire the people with the expertise, or can I gain the expertise, or do I have to do trial and error until I finally stumble upon the right answer? Right now, we can, if it's trial and error, we can do it millions of times faster.
That's
So
right.
that's
Brian, was
exciting.
the general consensus from Jumpstart? I know AI, obviously, no secret there, big topic everywhere. It's just ubiquitous now. Just endless possibilities. Thank you for giving some good tangible examples, by the way. Was the consensus, though, at large at the conference? I feel like there's still a little bit of like the different camps, right? Those that feel like, yeah, there's something there. We're still early. We work in if you're in transportation logistics, again, I always say we're in the physical world, Brian, right? Things that happen every day that, it's a 24-hour news cycle if you don't believe me, but it's just like things happen all the time that I just think that it's just real. I wonder if we'll ever get to a point where machines are really able to, maybe that predictive piece or the probability piece. How do you intervene and reconcile those things? And I think, again, when I speak to executives like yourself, there's some are kind of in the camp of like, the very progressive, like this, there's nothing it can't do. And we're going that's where full speed ahead. Others are kind of, and again, it's typically a generational gap sometime. And I try to see it through both lenses of kind of some skepticism, maybe some things that have been marketed very well and conceptualized. But when it gets down to the reality of the integration and the data quality that is required, and just the resistance, maybe it's from some organizations because of the fear factor of being made redundant. These are all things that I think are being discussed, whether it's in a podcast or in a back room or at a bar. But did you feel like there was a good, was the overall consensus again was it positive, or was it was there more skepticism? Was it just a mixed bag? I'm just, because that's just what I sense in my own interactions.
It's definitely a mixed bag, right? I
Yeah.
mean, any new technology, you've got those that are on the bleeding edge. They'll try it,
Yeah.
whether it's gonna, just because they're curious
Yeah.
or they really want to get an edge or what
Right.
have you. Probably that's the next level down, is those that want to get an edge, or they see the application for their business, and they have the time and the resources to invest in
Yeah.
it, right? Because one of the things is, I do think some of the hesitation isn't necessarily, I think there's a lot of optimism around it.
Mm-hmm.
But when things are changing on a daily, weekly basis, like how much do you want to invest in what's available today, when
Right.
what happens next week or next month may lower your cost to adopt it?
Yeah.
And did you gain anything from that month? Maybe, maybe
Right.
not. I mean, and I think a lot of people are, especially in this industry, right? We're dealing with, like you said, tangible things, and
Yeah.
they're like, hey, that's all great, but rubber meet road. It's got to benefit me today in a solid, tangible way. Some people are more risk averse than others. They're
Yeah.
like, hey, it may not be perfect what I'm doing. It may not be the absolute best way, but it's working for me. It's working for my
Yeah.
business. And, everybody's situation's a little bit different. I think obviously what we see is the technology providers are coming out first.
Mm-hmm.
And
Shocker. Yeah.
they're trying to, right, because it's a competitive world, and everybody, that's where maybe being the first mover, if you can find a great use case and demonstrate that use case, you can get a commercial advantage. Obviously, and then you've got the logistics providers, where if they adopt a new tech, number one, they've got teams of people looking for the newest, latest, and greatest. Right? They've got development teams in-house that are focused on logistics and technology, software and solutions. And they find one good answer, good application, one helpful solution, and they can help tens, hundreds, thousands of clients.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're an individual shipper, number one, you are worried about managing the day to day, right, and getting through that. And they may not have the time to invest in it. They may not have dedicated resources. They may have to fight internally for development resources.
A lot of factors. Yeah.
Exactly. So, you see that process with any new technology.
Well, and Brian, I think you made a good point. I think during the COVID boom era, right, where everyone was making cash hand over fist, I think there was the appetite, and that kind of was that juxtaposition of really historically great market, especially for the carriers, and just everyone seemed to try to take a piece of that pie. There was an appetite to kind of look more into the bleeding edge because the budgets allowed it, and I think you make a good point. What I start to, as the market has obviously gone in a completely different direction, and CFOs are scrutinizing every vendor, and is this just bleeding edge cool stuff? Like, hit the ejection button. Let's go back to the basics. But I think again, you're talking about the tangible use cases that we can adopt today. And I think I'm with you. I think that there's a lot of functions that exist in these companies that have overhead and a cost and the head count. And I think we can agree that, and maybe it's back office or just mundane repetitive tasks that I think even when I engage with some of these departments, I think even they realize like, I don't know that this is the best use of our time and company dollars, resources to do, data entry or whatever that looks like. So I think, but you're right. I think companies now are starting to kind of, I won't say a full pivot, but they're going back to like, look, if we can apply this really cool calculator to the back office and take a department of, 30, 40 people, whatever that looks like, and reduce that down to just, a much smaller crew from the human capital side, then that's a win. And I think that's a trend I'm kind of seeing now, especially in the current environment of like, we want to see things that can produce some kind of outcome that we can quantify and it's empirical and we can see some incremental progress. And I think that's where I'm trying to always in this balance of, hey, don't just try to solve this puzzle, AI guys, right? Because it's really like, I don't even know if you can solve it all, at least not in my lifetime, maybe. But I think, again, it goes back to like just that's why I go back to what is the general consensus, because even the naysayers seem to be like, well, I guess if it's going to do like, you explain a use case for my, this task, you're like, okay, I'll buy into that. And that's kind of how I try to get in with these companies instead of trying to this pie in the sky. And I think, again, that's what just almost further the skepticism. It just increases that because I don't think anybody's come out of the saying AI has solved my network. It's, it's just, it hasn't happened. So you get that probably in your role now, right? Like, and as commercial facing guy, it's like, hey, Brian, like, tell us, we don't know. And we need you guys to kind of lead us there, but please don't overcommit and overpromise and, the under delivery, the inevitable, right? If you go that approach. So I know I'm speaking kind of just spitballing here, but I think the conceptually, I think that's what I'm hearing more now is show me the money, right? Show me what it can do. And I think every conference I'm going to is, I don't want to hear about these AI, like high level, like demo your product, and whether it's AI or not, just show me that you did it faster, more accurately, the productivity was higher, the outputs are very compelling, right? And I think that's exactly what I'm hearing now. So are you feeling that too a little bit? Is that?
Absolutely. Oh, yes. Yeah. I think people felt, they feel maybe a little bit skeptical or burned based on, oh, hey, blockchain's going to be the next big thing. Well, where is it now, right?
Self-driving trucks are, wait.
It's a great solution without a problem that, there were a few issues with that, right? But, and with AI, oh, hey, it has AI in it. Well, okay. Does it? Or did Chris just code something behind the scenes and say it's a complicated if statement? How do I know any different, right? It's a big black box. The other thing that I think holds people back a little bit from adopting it, and I thought Zach Cass did a great job of explaining this, like when it came to like automated autonomous vehicles, right? Mm-hmm. So if Brian is driving, because we all like Brian, and he hits a 5-year-old on a tricycle, it's a travesty. But maybe that's a bad example. It's a little extreme. But so Brian hits a lamppost or whatever, right? It's like, oh well, Brian hurt himself. He's whatever. It happens all the time. People make mistakes. No big deal. But if an autonomous driven car hits a lamppost, it's oh my goodness, that could have been the 5-year-old on the tricycle. That could have been a family of children walking across the street. They could have driven straight into a storefront window. Our level of tolerance for mistakes by machines is absolute zero.
Well said.
Whereas our tolerance for acceptance by people because we're all people, we can empathize with them. We don't empathize with the machine.
Right.
They're supposed to be perfect, but we empathize with people. So it's that's the thing. Even though maybe autonomous vehicles can lower the rate of accidents by 98%, well, guess what? That 2% failure rate is not acceptable. We're not going to go that way. We'll take the full 100% of the accidents we have today and not take the risk on the 2% because you don't know that 2%, the level of magnitude, or we don't like to give up control. So I thought that
I
was
think that's it. I think it's the control, right? I think we as humans, we like to have assert ourselves as in control. And I get that. It's visceral to us. And I think it goes back, you look at mortality rates by fatigue or, DUI. It's just human, whether it could have been avoided or not, right? These things happen, but you nailed it. It's like, oh, I could see how that could happen.
right. My
But when it's a
autonomous
machine,
vehicle
right?
will
Yeah.
never get a DUI.
Right, right.
But yet, we don't want to accept that. And I'm not advocating for autonomous vehicles. That is, there is a lot of trust and a lot of tests and a lot of confidence that needs to be built in that as a solution.
Yeah.
But it comes to everybody's business too. And you talk about, you talk to a carrier about, optimizing their network, and we have a great AI model to optimize your P&D network in this market and that market. And they're like, well, that's great, but what if it doesn't, what if it doesn't
what if it
work?
doesn't
What if it
work,
doesn't,
right? Yeah.
I can't trust it. I can't see what it's doing. So, that trust takes time. I mean, you don't just meet somebody off the street and suddenly
Yeah.
trust that they're going to be, everybody's got to build trust over time. And I think it's no different with the technology. You've got to build the trust in it. It comes from exposure and success and iteration, multiple touch points. And over time, then you will gain the trust in it.
Yeah.
So it's going to be it'll be an evolution. It's going to be, let me install this. And maybe I had 6 people watching these 12 monitors.
Right.
And now I can have one AI powered application. And maybe I'm down to 2 people kind of with their hands on the switches, and that AI applications giving them feedback loops to make sure that they've got the confidence that everything's operating within tolerance, right? So, and then I've gained the efficiency of everybody else that was doing that can go and do something other, that's another high value adding activity. So
you and I are very aligned, I think, just fundamentally on how we think about this, Brian. So that's good to get kind of hear you reciprocate my thoughts, because I am not the PhD operations research guy. I'm just an average Joe that's trying to, again, as a practitioner, just trying to, again, how do I bridge these things together in conversations that a business crowd will understand without, again, needing to be Sam Altman or Zach, coming from, and again, I think those guys are on a whole nother level of genius. I'm not nowhere in that same stratosphere by any means, but I do think, and maybe it's just because we're industry practitioners, we always there's a little pride about, hey, we've learned a few things over the years. And I don't know, maybe that's, at least in my head, I think that. But, well, Brian,
and I think it's the edge case that scare people, right? It's the edge cases. It's, well, what happens when this happens, right?
Right.
Well, when was the last time that happened? Well, it hasn't happened in my 50 years of employment doing this role, but it might happen. And so, the black swan event, the what have you. So, but we'll get there.
And we've learned, that's another good point, because when we do, like in the optimization realm, right? I've seen this where you'll have an output that's like 85% like accurate. And they're like, yeah, but what do? Maybe it's humans again. We focus on that delta, right? Well, 15% of the time, this wasn't right. So that's at the user level. So when I'm like, and then of course it can spiral, because like, yeah, the software is just not, it's not perfect. It's like, well, whoa, who claimed that it was? And why are we not focusing on the 80+% of things we just automated with an equal, if not greater outcome? And then they're like, well, the model was just as good as, well, it didn't do any better than our planners and dispatch, whoever, right? It's like, okay, but I would argue, my counter argument is, but we did it in 15 seconds. And, 4 hours ago, your team with, 15 people started doing the same. And if our outputs are the same, do you not see the win of just the time difference there? And it's kind of like, oh, well, I guess that's true. And so I think that's kind of like, we have to be, we have to shift our focus to, we're always, and maybe it's human nature, find what's not working, right? It's just who we are. Well, I think we've got to be more willing to embrace and accept that, hey, let's focus on what it is doing well. And I think as we can get, and part of that's the hurdle, right? Let me shift that mindset. But, it's easy to call out things when they're not exactly perfect and right. And I guess that's, again, human nature. So
yeah, and every application is, some you've got some tolerance for some error or some adjustment, and others you don't, right? Like I don't want an AI bot performing surgery on me. Oh, sorry, the doctor called in sick, but don't worry, we've got Howard here, the AI. The robot's going to do the open heart surgery on you, and don't worry, he's good 99.9% of the time. And I'm like, what?
Right. But we talk about the human error out. We're willing to give a huge pass for human mistakes, but we don't, like you said, the tolerance for a machine making, one glitch, it's like, that's it.
You need to know who's at fault. We need to throat to
point that
choke.
finger. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Well, Brian, what do you know? I kind of go back to the discussion yesterday that you had with some with JB Hunt and who was the other? You had, I think there was a couple different folks on there about just the API discussion is what I'm getting at.
Okay. Are you talking the Digital Tail Council meeting?
Yes.
Yeah.
Which was interesting because I think it was kind of this consortium of like, finally, it's a think tank of folks in our industry that are honestly competitors in a lot of ways. They had the LTL side and they have now truckloads getting in, right? And I think there was like this, it was super cool to see, hey, are we starting to realize that the rising tide lifts all boats kind of mindset can happen if we can start to like some governance and some standardization around data, the exchange of that data. And I think it kind of went this, maybe you could explain for people that don't know that may even want to get involved in this. Can you kind of give a recap of that discussion yesterday? I did tune in, and I was, again, the one thing I took away more than anything was like, we're making progress as a village versus, looking at it as that's a trade secret. We're not going to, it's like, it's an API. We're just trying to standardize, the way we exchange information. Can we not agree on that? So can you kind of give a little recap of what that initiative is about?
Yes, of course. Yeah. So, about 5 years ago, a small group of industry stakeholders, shippers, technology companies, carriers, 3PLs got together and said, hey, every carrier is developing these great API connections to their systems to do rate quotes, schedule pickups, get status updates on their shipments, retrieve documents, et cetera, right? And interestingly, everyone's developing those independently. Well, what does that lead to? It leads to, if 50 carriers are doing it independently, 50 different ways. And so then a logistics company, maybe that's working with 30 of those, says, well, I can't tailor my connections 30 independent ways, right? And I want one connection, right? And that's what, and that's what up to this point, SMC3 has kind of helped fill that void. We connect to the 50, and then they can connect to us once and get access to all 50 or whichever the 50 they like, and it speeds their adoption. Well, as this group got together, we're like, hey, what if we tackle this on the front end before people develop it and develop some core standards that also help reduce the friction and lower the barrier to entry of adoption of these API connections to carriers. And then we can do things like automate our transportation, some of the processes and procedures in our transportation management system. Hey, I'm looking for certain things. When I want to know when that shipment is picked up, I want to know when that shipment has delivered. I want to know how long it took to deliver it so that I can audit whether that, that detention charge is legit or not. Right? Those kind of things, right? They want data, they want information flowing in their system so they can make decisions that they manually have to go retrieve today or manually process to go from one step to the other. So we started down this journey, and it's, I'm fortunate enough to be on the board with a great group of experts. Greg West from C.H. Robinson, the vice chair on that. And we've got representatives, like I said, from across the industry. But we've got the electronic bill of lading is where we started, because let's start at the beginning. We all love our paper bills of lading, but gosh, if we could give the carrier visibility to what they're picking up in advance, and they'll be more prepared. They'll be more likely to be on time, less transcription errors. I don't know if you've seen some of these city names, but some of them are not exactly plain English, right? So we can reduce, the chance that somebody's going to transpose a zip code. You're less likely to have a misload and have to reroute that freight and get it there. Be more likely to get it there on time, which is what everybody wants. The carrier wants it. The shipper wants it. Everybody wants it, right? So we started with the electronic bill of lading, and we moved from that, and we released that standard a few years ago. And now we've released the standard back in December on pickup request and pickup visibility API service. So now you can go from the submitting the bill of lading, submit the pickup request, and if you're interested and the carriers offer it, you can now see on the pickup visibility front, how many stops away is it? What's their ETA? When do I expect them to be here? Make sure I've got, staff ready, alert, the freight's ready be moved. We can reduce their time on my dock. And I don't have people constantly, with one eye out the window, waiting for the guy to come with the truck. And he's doing paperwork with the other hand. And, it just makes everybody's life, easier to predict and more efficient. So there's that. And then following that, we're right now working on preliminary freight charges. So especially, we already talked about the changes to the classification.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's expected to, so once a shipment's picked up by the carrier, if they reweigh a shipment or if they change the class, they find that the class needs to be different than what the shipper conveyed on the bill of lading.
Mm-hmm.
Now they can communicate those things in process. Oh, hey, there was a lift gate required to pick up, or there was a lift gate required at delivery. They can convey that back to the shipper. Hey, we've added this charge to your invoice preliminarily. It's not a final invoice yet, but it gives them advanced visibility.
Yes.
I think it's great that's going to be very important for a shipper that is that maybe is passing along those charges to another party, a 3PL that has made a commitment on a price of service to their clients. Well, now they can tell while the shipment's still potentially in transit, oh, hey, you know what? You didn't tell me that the pickup location was a residence. So I just want you to know that you're going to have this additional fee on there. Whereas today, they don't know that until they've received the invoice. Well, that could be, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 days down the road. And now they've got to make a decision. Do I want to go back and position that with, the guy paying at the end, my client?
Well, the reconciliation, you got the investigation process starts all rear facing. And I think that's the point, right? Why can't we get proactively and get ahead of these things? Because we all agree, again, it's not a selfish undertaking here. This is going to benefit the entire, everyone's network. So
absolutely. And the goal with that preliminary freight charge service is hopefully you can then, you can automate, and auto approve those charges, authorize them earlier so that when the invoice does come, it can get paid quicker. There's fewer disputes, the carrier benefits, the 3PL benefits. So that's the goal of that one. That should be launching here later this spring. So that'll be coming out. And then in the fall, we've got our in-transit visibility and status updates standard coming out. And then next year, we're going to round this out with rate quote, which is very complex, but everybody wants those accessorial charges standardized. It starts with preliminary freight charges, but a lot of that work then is foundational to lead into the rate quote. So that's coming. A dispute process, how do you automate those? Claims processes. So that's coming down the road in 2026 and beyond. But it just sets the foundation for digital transfer of information and potentially automation. So we're very excited about it.
I think you're on the right course. And again, for anyone listening in, I check it out. Brian's probably a good resource among others, right? It's some publicly available information there out online, but super cool initiative. Brian, the last topic I kind of want to talk to, which I know is near and dear to you, is you mentioned the rate quoting. That kind of ties into pricing, right? And dynamic pricing. And you've seen the history literally of kind of from LTL lens, especially, a lot of this business in general is you live and die on the pricing, right? Because we're talking sometimes higher volume commitments at a locked in rate. And, you hear the industry, and I'm more on the truckload side, but there's some old guys out there that'll say, our industry just we have a commitment problem. We can't commit to and it's just this revolving door between the shipper community, and then you got the other side of the coin on the asset carriers, LTL, full truckload, 3PLs, brokers, and it's just this. It's almost like we love the fact that the pendulum of power swings, and it's like the revenge season and things it's just which again just baffles me, because I'm going back to the some of these other initiatives we just discussed. It's meant to make the industry better. But when we talk about pricing, that can be the secret sauce, right? And you again, as much as anyone I've had on this podcast, probably has a very intimate understanding and knowledge around pricing. So what are your thoughts around where does that go, right? You've seen the history of how pricing gets done. And again, probably more so in the LTL lens, but where can we expect the pricing to go from an RFP standpoint, spot market? There's tools everywhere, right? There's load boards, there's all these sources, but like, I think at the end of the day, when you talk to companies, they're like, I want to know that I'll sleep better tonight knowing that the rates that I submitted are in line with market. I didn't overshoot, I didn't overpay, or I didn't get undercut big time because I didn't have the analytics and the know-how to make sure that I feel confident and submitting those pricing proposals. So give me some thoughts, Brian. What can we expect moving forward? Again, I know you're an expert in this field.
Sure, sure. Yeah, happy to. It's a big topic. We could take another hour talking about
Yeah.
this one.
I'd be
Easy.
remiss if I didn't get your pricing input, though. I'd be remiss.
Yes, no, of course. Yeah. So kind of the future of LTL pricing, where is it going, right? I mean, I look in the short term, we already talked about the classification
Yeah,
changes. I think
that's
one
going
of
to be
the
a big,
impacts, yeah, one of the impacts of the classification changes is definitely that more of the freight is going to be priced based on the actual volume that the shipment that each handling unit occupies in the trailer, which makes the carriers more efficient,
Mhm.
encourages the shippers to be efficient with the packaging and that kind of thing, right? But I think once they get comfortable with, oh, hey, right now it's this new classification table is a density to class lookup table. Basically, it's
Yeah.
saying my rates are structured using class.
Hmm.
But how am I getting the class? Well, by the density. And so as more of the
Right.
freight goes that way, I do think it opens the door to more direct, I guess, innovation and creativity. And on the pricing front, at some point, you start getting away from some of the archaic file structures that we've
Right.
had since, before computing power has come such a long way. We talked a lot about that in
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
hour, right? And so it's going to open the door to that. More folks are going to have access to technology from the fact they've got dimensioners, they've got these API connections to
Hmm.
get real time feeds and data on quotes, both to request a quote and transmit true shipment characteristics, and to receive the quotes. I'll tell you from pricing on LTL carriers, if shippers want the best price, you've got to give the carriers the best data, because pricing people are risk averse people. Okay. And so they're going to assume the worst.
Yeah.
That's why FAKs don't work to the shipper's advantage, because I'm going to assume that you're going to give me the worst, fluffiest, least dense freight possible to get your rates, and you're optimizing me against other providers. And that technology is out there too, right? The proliferation of TMS
Hmm.
systems. So now
Yeah.
folks are working on their screen. They're not picking up the phone, calling, working with a big chief tablet near as often. Not saying that doesn't happen, but and so so they've got that electronic form of communication. These connections to their WMS and their order management systems, their ERPs, is getting better. And as they continue to get better, and that data gets more granular, it's going to lead to more accurate price quotes. And more accurate price quotes generally does mean more saving, because if I'm pricing with more certainty, I know I have to be competitive. I know it's a competitive world, but I can't, right now, up to this point, there's been too much. The process has been, tell me generally what your freight looks like. Tell me generally, where does it ship from, where does it ship to? And I'll tell you, based on the worst case of what you just told me, my worst case assumptions, what your price is going to be. But I'd be happy to dial it in, because I know I have to be competitive to pick up your business. If I know specifically what are the DIMs on each shipment, if I know
Right.
specifically, what is the zip, how frequently, what days of the week are you shipping? And so that's where, this kind of, you mentioned dynamic pricing. I
Hmm.
think dynamic pricing is it's a large term, and that's one thing that's gonna evolve. I think pricing in general is gonna evolve, whether it's dynamic to the point where every minute my price is
Yeah.
changing, like your airfares or whatever. I mean,
Right.
maybe someday, but the system's got to come a long way.
Yeah.
The certainty needs to be there to make that happen. We're a long way away from that, but I do think there will be more flexibility. Up until this point, you've already had shippers that go to logistics companies that then shop the freight, right? And they're shopping, so they're offering their clients rates dynamically, right? They're changing the markups that they're asking on top of the transportation costs based on what they know about their client, based
Yeah.
on what they know about their price sensitivity, based on what they know about
A
the
lot of
like
intelligence there. Yeah.
a,
Just hedging
a
bets. Yeah.
surprise charge on the bill. If they know there's not going to be a surprise charge, they'll be more exact and lower priced. If they expect there's a 20% chance of a limited access charge hitting me, well, I'm going to ask another $100. I'm sorry, right? So that's now there will always be a segment of the industry that values and needs predictability.
Yeah.
Your large corporate shippers with established shipping locations, I'm not suggesting that they will deviate anytime soon from established contracts, rates that are set on those contracts that use, pricing that was developed 80 years ago, right? It's all that will still be there. It's the shippers and the book of business where it's less predictable, where you really can't look at a data file and say, okay, I can make solid, sure assumptions based on this freight. So what qualifies for that? It's anything coming in from a freight broker, from a like a freight forwarder, sorry, coming in on the ports. It's a small shipper that ships, once a week or twice a week. It's going to be the book of business that a third-party logistics company prices on their blanket program, right? That's the general price they're offering the world. It's a carrier that is offering a rate on their website, and they don't necessarily, it might be a new customer, right? It may be introductory pricing, and maybe we don't know you, but if you'll tell me all the specifics about your shipment, I can give you a very specific price, right? So, but if you're only going to give me zip weight class, it's going to be a less favorable price. You're going to get a fabulous 50% discount, right? I mean, that's,
Do you think, Brian?
LTL, that sounds like a good discount, but in LTL,
different ball game. Do you think the shippers in general are becoming more receptive to this, and sharing more about the profiles and going beyond the blanket model that we've seen, like you just alluded to? Or is it just going back to like just humans? Like I don't want to, I'm not going to share all that. I just need a quote. Just give me and then it's almost, and I've been a shipper, right? And doing monthly accruals and going back and seeing, paying for, custom critical type shipments, and then realizing that, baby say like, did that deliver? Because we just paid a, expedited rate. It looks like it took 5 days. Why didn't I just go like just economy, right? And I had to go back and play investigator. And it was kind of like, again, we should have had this communication much earlier. And again, if there's just some kind of bad apples that are trying to take advantage, that's different. That happens. But overall, I was just like, this process is broken. And I just felt like the shippers guilty, because it was like, well, we asked you all the right questions. You just never got back to us. You just wanted an answer now. And if I'm in an LTL carrier, she was like, well, I've got a hedge on that. I can't anticipate. But like you said, I think as data becomes more the proliferation, and we're able to get down to that level of granularity, then that will tie into pricing, because it should be some repository of like, we know, and it's not hearsay anymore. You've got data to support that, right?
Yes, and I've seen an acceptance of more of that granular information needing to be passed over, right? I've seen it from third-party logistics companies now that are like, when I was pricing at Yellow, 10 years ago, they'd be like all up in arms. I can't give you the freight characteristics. That's unreasonable. There's no way. I can tell you the size of that pallet. I'm like, you can't tell me. I mean, 2 of the 3 dimensions if you know the pallet size, so you can't just tell me the height now, right? And I've seen that change though, where they realize that, because carriers have been very specific and creative with creating new charges, new rules that say, hey, guess what? If you have a handling unit that's over 6 feet in length, I'm going to charge you an extra $75. If it's over 12 feet in length, I'm charging you another $150. If it's over 16 feet, I'm charging you $1,000 more, right? I mean, so you better know the length, and you want an accurate rate quote. It is what it is. And I'm even seeing this go beyond pricing and going to transit and service commitments. So carriers, because the data, as it becomes more and more available, and I expect this will be a trend we see more and more, where they say, hey, you know what, like I do prioritize the movement of the freight if it fits in, on a regular pallet, and it's nice palletized, bundled freight. I'm willing to commit to a very fast transit time. But if it takes a lot of extra handling, if I need to store it, if I need to make sure it stays frozen, if I have to make sure that, I've got my dock clear because it's a flagpole, right? I'm not going to commit to a 1-day transit on that, right? I'm going to be smart. I'll move it to 4 days if I have to, just to make sure that, because I don't want to fail you. I don't want to miss.
You've been burned. Everybody's been burned. You don't make that mistake again, right?
That's right.
Yeah, I hope you're right. And I feel like, again, when I was in the shipper world, dealt with multi-modes, it was just at a transaction, a singular transaction, it was like this, we would be like, okay, just incur the cost. And to your point, again, not saying there was bad actors, because the shipper's guilty is a lot of times. We didn't give enough transparency and visibility into exactly what we were asking. And I think that cumulatively at the end of the year, you're like, oh, what is it? At aggregate, those charges really added up. But it was just kind of in the day-to-day, because transportation is fluid and we got to go put out the next fire. You just let it add up. And I think there were probably carriers that knew that fundamentally, like, they're never going to go back and try to dig into this, right? And again, if you're doing it incrementally, it doesn't just set off the alarms. But at the end of the year, we got beat down of how did this happen? So again, like you said, it's the quote to the invoice, right? What changed in that process?
Absolutely, absolutely. And let me give you a counterpoint, if I can, because this was an interesting takeaway from the conference. So this kind of takes us full circle.
Yeah.
So Kevin Huntsman with Mastio Group did shipper surveys. And one of the results of the survey was, how many, or what percentage of shippers with X amount of volume are using TMS systems, right? So basically, only 40% of shippers use a TMS at all. Out of a sample size of 2,000, only 40% use a TMS. And of those that ship over 100 shipments a week, the number is still only 60%. Ooh. For those that ship over 150 shipments a week, the number is 68%. So somewhere along the way, and I encounter it all the time.
It baffles me.
Companies that are shipping millions of dollars in LTL freight, and they don't even have a transportation management system. So this
is 2025 we just entered, right? I just want to make sure we're clear on that, right? We are in the modern era. We just entered into 2025. So the fact that there is no source of record, i.e. TMS, and that number is staggering. I feel like I've heard that in years past, but I'm like, this is hot off the press of the newest survey, and it's just
hot off the press. Absolutely, yes, it's hard to believe, but very true. I encounter it monthly, just meeting with shippers. So, but it's getting there. It's greatly improved from where it was, but there's still a lot of opportunity for technology adoption, for data granularity to really feed that. And I really kind of feel like as these new technologies, whether they be AI or the latest greatest pricing algorithms or optimization algorithms, I feel like as those the rubber's got to be on the road, right? And once those use cases are realized, it's going to be a requirement in order for those companies to compete and operate efficiently.
It's the cost of doing business. Yeah.
It is absolutely is the cost of doing business. So, but there's still a lot of runway to be had. Yeah. That's what that tells me.
That's right. Well, Brian, I've kept you for over an hour, buddy. And I know that you told the missus and the fam that you got a talker over here. Thankfully, and I did. I thoroughly enjoyed our lunch. We had impromptu. I think you were having some salad at the JOC Inland Chicago, my backyard, last year. We just got to good chatting. Yes. So always just super fun and enlightening and insightful to hear your thoughts, Brian. So I really appreciate the time today. I don't want to hold you anymore because I know you're on the East Coast and I'm looking at my clock and I'm going, I've kept Brian's. I'm gonna get a mouthful from somebody. But hey, you're an excellent resource. Hopefully today kind of just further accentuated just how much knowledge you have and experience. What's a great way we've talked about a bunch of things today, but I think, again, I'm going to say if people really want to understand LTL from Brian's lens, I mean, a super amazing resource. What do you suggest people do in terms of reaching out to you, Brian? Is it emails? Is it LinkedIn? Is it go to the website, get involved on some of these other initiatives we talked about? What are your thoughts on that?
It's all of the above. Okay. All of the above, Chris. Yeah, they're welcome to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Welcome to send me an email, bthompson, THOMPSON at smc3.com. Not complicated. They're welcome to reach out via the website. We've got a contact us form, and they're welcome to reach out that way. And and be happy to talk to. I mean, that's the best part of the job, honestly, is getting to meet so many interesting people with very unique and interesting problems. But there's a lot of commonality that stretches across the industry. So yeah, I think knowledge sharing is the one thing that we can all count on. And while AI may help provide some information, you know, the AI sharing, human to human, the human to human information sharing is never going to go away. So
I hope you're right. I really do. What can AI do? I hope it's not. I hope I'm not talking to some proxy Brian in the future that's been pre-programmed to answer. So I was like, this authenticity. There's somebody going. We're way ahead of you. Way ahead of you. We already got that. So, Brian, are you going to be at any other shows, conferences, events that you're going to be at? Again, I know people can reach you, offline, but speaking of face to face, what's your agenda looking like for the foreseeable few weeks, months, et cetera, on the road?
We'll have SMC3 staff all over the industry.
You're everywhere.
We're at Manifest this week, coming up. We're at TCA. We're at,
Are you going, Brian, personally, or is this just like you send in? I know it's a massive, you got a big team.
Yes, I'm not able to attend personally, but come and say hi to us. We've usually got a booth at these places.
Yep.
And I definitely want to put a plug in for Connections. June 23rd to 26th is going to be our summer conference. Should be a blast. It's out in Salt Lake City this year at the Great American Hotel. And we've got a great event planned. We've got some really cool side excursions happening. We've got Park City, Utah is right there. So stay tuned. I think, the website's already we already have the shell of it up. So come visit and check us out.
I'm going to try to make connections. Yeah, register early. Good point. And again, kudos to SMC3. And I don't know if you had any say in this, Brian, but we seem to always have the same usual suspects in terms of venue and location. So the fact that you guys, I think, had Denver, somewhere in Colorado, like gorgeous, and now, and so just kind of places that I think, at least from, maybe I'm selfish because I see that if I go to Nashville, which I already have another one, I'm like, I feel like a Nashville resident sometimes. So again, kudos to your organization for saying, hey, let's have a different landscape and backdrop for these events. So again, to Brian's point, you missed Jumpstart. We'll have it again next year, post holidays, I assume. But Connections, I think, I hear equally, if not, the audiences may be a little different. But I think Connections, if you're really looking to get that thought leadership, it sounds like Connections is absolute, amazing opportunity to do just that.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah, come join us. Yeah, every summer it's in a different location.
Yeah.
Start in January is always the third week of January here in Atlanta. So you can count on that like clockwork. Yes, but all are welcome, and so check us out. If you haven't come before, give us a shout, sign up, register. We're happy to host.
Well, SMC3 again, a name that an organization, a company that just everyone in this space at some point or another will know, right? There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So again, Brian, thank you for the time today, man. Hope to see you out at some point. I'll definitely say hello to the team at some of the events that you mentioned that I will be at. And for those joining in today, thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you found it useful and insightful. Brian's giving you some food for thought at a minimum, I hope, and some ways to reach him. So again, this is Chris. We'll be on the air again soon with another episode of Semi-Related. So until then, everybody stay safe, and looking forward to seeing you soon. All right.